What if I told you that every single thing you have ever learned about the fundamental requirements for animal life has a glaring exception? Imagine an animal, a true member of the kingdom Animalia, that does not breathe. It has no need for lungs, no gills, no mechanism whatsoever for taking in oxygen. It simply exists, generation after generation without taking a single breath. This sounds like something from a far-flung science fiction tale, a creature from a distant, inhospitable planet. Yet, this very organism lives right here on Earth, hidden away from our sight, silently challenging one of the most basic rules of biology. It forces us to ask a profound question. If an animal can live without oxygen, what other unbreakable rules of nature are waiting to be shattered? This creature is not a simple bacterium or a hardy single-celled archaeon, organisms we have long known to thrive in oxygen-deprived environments. No, this is a complex, multicellular animal, a relative of jellyfish and corals. It belongs to the same grand tree of life as we do. For centuries we have operated under the assumption that all animals, from the smallest insect to the largest blue whale, are bound by the necessity of aerobic respiration. This process, the conversion of oxygen and nutrients into energy, powers every movement, every thought, every heartbeat. To find an animal that has completely abandoned this pathway is akin to finding a car that runs without any fuel at all. It is a biological ghost, a phantom that thrives where all others would perish. The existence of such an animal opens a Pandora's box of possibilities and questions. It makes us look at the familiar world around us with fresh eyes, wondering what other secrets lie concealed in plain sight. The natural world is a tapestry of infinite complexity and wonder, and just when we believe we have mapped its essential patterns, it presents us with an exception so profound it forces us to redraw the entire map. The creature at the heart of this biological revolution is not a terrifying monster from the abyss, or a majestic beast roaming a lost continent. In fact, it is quite the opposite. Its name is Haenaguya salminicola, and it is a tiny, microscopic parasite. It belongs to a group of animals known as myxozoans, closely related to cnidarians, jellyfish, sea anemones, corals. This relationship is remarkable. Imagine the ethereal pulsating form of a jellyfish, then shrink it down to a near incomprehensible size, simplify its body plan to a few cells, and you begin to get a picture of the world from which Haenaguya emerged. It is a highly specialized, even devolved member of this ancient lineage. You will not find Haenaguya salminicola swimming freely in the ocean or crawling on the forest floor. Its entire life cycle unfolds within the body of another animal. Specifically, it lives inside the muscle tissue of salmonid fish, salmon and trout. To the naked eye, its presence is marked by small white cysts that can dot the flesh of the fish, giving it a condition sometimes called tapioca disease. For a long time, these cysts were viewed as little more than a nuisance for the fishing industry. Little did anyone suspect that within these humble white specks lay an organism that would completely upend our understanding of animal biology and evolution. To truly grasp the significance of Haenaguya salminicola, we must first understand why oxygen is so indispensable for almost all animal life. At the cellular level, animals are powered by tiny organelles called mitochondria. These are often called the powerhouses of the cell, and for good reason. Within the mitochondria, a complex chemical process called aerobic respiration takes place. In simple terms, this process uses oxygen to break down nutrients, sugars, fats. That breakdown converts fuel into adenosine triphosphate, ATP. ATP is the universal energy currency of life. Every muscle contraction, every nerve impulse, every cellular repair job is paid for with ATP. Without oxygen, the energy production line grinds to a halt. The mitochondria become useless. This is why we, as humans, cannot survive for more than a few minutes without breathing. Our brains, our hearts, and vital organs are voracious consumers of ATP. The only way to meet their demands is through aerobic respiration. When oxygen is cut off, the power goes out, and the cellular machinery that keeps us alive begins to fail catastrophically. This fundamental truth applies not just to us, insects, fish, birds, reptiles, and every other animal we've studied in detail. It has always been considered a non-negotiable rule of animal existence. This is precisely what makes Haenaguya salminicola so utterly bizarre. It is an animal that has completely and utterly abandoned this rule. It has no mitochondria, or at least it has no mitochondrial genome, the instruction manual for building aerobic machinery. It is the first, and so far only, multicellular animal discovered to lack this critical genetic code. It has effectively thrown out the entire playbook for how to be an animal. It does not perform aerobic respiration because it simply cannot. the genes required to do so have been completely lost over the course of its evolution. It is a biological anomaly of the highest order. So, if it is not using oxygen, how does it survive? How does it generate the ATP it needs to live, grow, and reproduce? The answer is still being pieced together, but scientists believe it has reverted to a more ancient and far less efficient form of energy production known as anaerobic respiration. This process does not require oxygen, common in bacteria, yeasts, and some other simple organisms. It's also the process our muscle cells use as a last resort during intense exercise. However, anaerobic respiration produces far less ATP than aerobic respiration. For Haneguya, it seems this meager energy budget is just enough to sustain its incredibly simplified existence as a parasite. For years, scientists had been studying myxozoans. Their focus was often on classifying them, understanding their impact on host species. The idea that one might not breathe was simply not on anyone's radar. The breakthrough came when a team of researchers, led by Professor Dorothée Huchon at Tel Aviv University, decided to sequence the complete genome of Haneguya salmonicola. They were initially interested in understanding its evolutionary relationship to jellyfish, but their investigation took a sharp and unexpected turn. As they assembled the creature's genetic code, they noticed something was conspicuously absent. All animals possess a separate, smaller genome located within their mitochondria. This mitochondrial DNA contains the essential genes for building the proteins needed for respiration. The researchers combed through their data again and again, but they could not find it. It was simply not there. At first, they thought it must be a technical error, a failure in the sequencing process. The absence of a mitochondrial genome in an animal was so unheard of, it seemed more likely to be a mistake than a genuine biological discovery. To confirm their astonishing finding, the team employed a special fluorescent dye that specifically binds to DNA. When they used this dye on the cells of Haneguya, they could see the DNA glowing in the cell's nucleus, just as expected. However, when they looked for the telltale glow of a separate mitochondrial genome, there was nothing. The powerhouses of the cell were dark. They then broadened their search, looking for the nuclear genes that regulate and build the mitochondria. These, too, were almost entirely gone. The evidence was undeniable. This animal had, over millions of years of evolution, systematically dismantled its own respiratory machinery. This discovery, published in 2020, sent shockwaves through the scientific community. It was the first time a multicellular animal had been found to lack the ability for aerobic respiration. It was a finding that would be written into biology textbooks for generations to come. It demonstrated that life could evolve in directions we never thought possible, shedding complex and seemingly essential functions in favor of a simpler, more streamlined existence. The discovery was not the result of a grand expedition to an unexplored jungle, but of meticulous work in a laboratory, peering into the genetic code of a creature that had been known for over a century, proving that profound discoveries can hide in the most familiar of places. So, what does this creature look like, and how does it manage its strange, breathless existence? It is, to put it mildly, not much to look at. In its infectious stage, it exists as a tiny spore measuring just a few micrometers across. It is an oblong structure with two long trailing tails that are actually specialized stinging cells called polar capsules, a clear evolutionary link to its jellyfish ancestors. These capsules are used to anchor the parasite to its host. When it finds a suitable fish, these capsules fire, injecting the parasite's germinal cells into the host's body. From there, it makes its way into the muscle tissue, where it will live out the rest of its life. Once inside the salmon's muscle, the parasite multiplies, forming the characteristic white cysts, visible to the naked eye. These cysts are essentially nurseries, colonies of thousands of developing spores. Section 6, A World of Difference, Us versus Them. Comparing Haneguya salmonicola to a human, to its fish host, it's like comparing a bicycle to a space shuttle. Both are forms of transport, but they operate on completely different principles and scales of complexity. A human being is a symphony of trillions of cells, all utterly dependent on a constant supply of oxygen. Our circulatory system, a massive piece of infrastructure, a powerful heart, arteries and veins, all dedicated to delivering oxygen to every last cell. Our lungs are sophisticated gas exchange organs, finely tuned to extract oxygen from the air. The salmon that hosts Haneguya is similarly complex. It possesses gills, marvels of biological engineering, designed to pull dissolved oxygen from the water with remarkable efficiency. Its red blood cells are packed with hemoglobin, a protein that latches onto oxygen and carries it through the fish's body. A flick of its tail, the pumping of its heart, powered by ATP generated through aerobic respiration in mitochondria. For both humans and salmon, life is a constant, active process of breathing and burning fuel. We are creatures of air and fire, metabolically speaking. Heneguya, on the other hand, has none of this. It has no heart, no lungs, no gills, no blood, and no circulatory system. It's a creature stripped of complex systems that define most animals. Its body is composed of just a handful of cells with specialized functions. It does not need a delivery system for oxygen because it does not use oxygen. It exists in a state of metabolic calm, a slow burn compared to the roaring fire of other animals. Its simplicity is its strength. It doesn't invest energy in building organ systems, allowing it to thrive on a much lower energy budget. This profound difference highlights the incredible diversity of evolutionary pathways. While most animals, including us, evolved towards greater complexity to conquer new environments, Heneguya took the opposite route. It evolved towards radical simplicity, shedding functions once essential for its free-living ancestors. It found its niche not by becoming bigger, not by becoming faster, not by becoming smarter, but by becoming smaller, simpler, and utterly dependent. It's a living demonstration that in evolution there's more than one way to win. Sometimes the best strategy is not to build a better engine, but to get rid of the engine altogether. Section 7. The peculiarities of a simplistic survivor. Beyond its lack of breathing, Heneguya salmonicola is packed with other strange and fascinating features. Its genome is one of the smallest ever recorded for any animal. Over time, it jettisoned vast amounts of genetic information it no longer needed. Lost gene, respiration, lost gene, sensory functions, lost gene, nerve development, lost gene, cell-to-cell communication, genetically whittled down to essentials. A minimalist masterpiece. For years, scientists debated if mixozoans were even animals. Many originally classified them as protists. Genetic sequencing changed everything. DNA signatures linked them to the Cnidaria phylum. Their ancestors were once complex, free-swimming creatures like jellyfish. Not primitive, highly evolved, and then simplified. One visually striking feature: polar capsules, tiny coiled harpoons, stinging structures to attach to hosts. Harpoons held under immense pressure, they discharge in a fraction of a second, among the fastest biological movements. Complex machinery in a simple organism. The host relationship is strange, but balanced. Tapioca disease looks alarming, yet Heneguya is relatively benign. It typically doesn't kill its salmon host. It lives off the fish without fatal harm, a delicate balance. This co-evolutionary dance over millions of years allowed Heneguya to abandon oxygen, a story of dependence, adaptation, and survival. Section 8. What this means for life as we know it. The discovery of an animal that does not need oxygen is more than just a fascinating piece of biological trivia. It fundamentally changes our perspective on the limits of life both here on Earth and potentially elsewhere in the universe. Heneguya salmonicola proves that this assumption is flawed. This single tiny parasite forces us to broaden our imagination. It suggests that complex life could evolve in environments we previously considered completely inhospitable. Here on Earth, understanding how Heneguya survives without mitochondria could open new avenues in medicine and biotechnology. Ultimately, the story of Heneguya salmonicola is a lesson in humility. The book of life is far longer and more bizarre than we can imagine.